Have you ever wondered how you want to live when you grow old? Will you be the one who sits back, watches life pass by, and follows a set routine, or will you be the one who continues to explore, adapt, and find joy in every new day? The choices you make as you age can shape your future, and in this video, we'll show you 6 inspiring stories of seniors who chose their path and kept control over their lives. From a grandparent learning how to make viral TikToks to a retired man embarking on a cross-country road trip, these individuals didn't let age or circumstances dictate their happiness. They found ways to live with independence, purpose, and fulfillment. Whether you're in your 50s or 80s, their stories will remind you that growing old doesn't mean giving up on your dreams or the things that make you feel alive. So, stick around until the end to discover how these seniors found joy and adventure in their later years, and how you can, too. You'll walk away with fresh perspectives on aging, practical tips to maintain your independence, and ideas for embracing new experiences, no matter your age. Don't miss out on these powerful, life-changing stories. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. Story 1. The Resilient Old Man, Mr. Bernard. At 87 years old, Mr. Bernard stood as a symbol of determination and unwavering independence. Throughout his long life, he lived by a simple yet powerful mantra: "As long as I'm breathing, I'm in charge of my own life." It wasn't just a phrase, it was his creed, one that shaped every choice he made. Every single day, as the morning light gently streamed through his window, Bernard would sit down with his cup of black coffee. No sugar, no milk, just as he believed life should be. No frills, no pretense, just real, unadulterated simplicity. He often chuckled as he sipped the bitter brew, calling it a reflection of life itself. Sometimes hard, sometimes strong, but always true. His mornings always began with his ritualistic walk through the neighborhood. No matter the weather, he would lace up his shoes, grab his cane, and stroll down the same familiar streets where the faces of old friends greeted him warmly. He'd stop at the local bakery, where the scent of fresh bread and pastries filled the air, and engage in animated conversations about the world. Despite his age, his sharp mind and wit made him a cherished figure among his peers. After his walk, he'd return home to settle in his favorite armchair, a historical novel in hand, where he would lose himself in the pages of another world. But as the years passed, even the most resilient spirits faced the inevitable reality of time. Bernard's body, though still strong in will, began to betray him. Aches and pains crept into his joints, slowing him down. Tasks that had once been second nature now required effort. His family, ever concerned and full of love for him, began to suggest something that Bernard could never fathom. Why not move into a nursing home? They can take care of you, give you the support you need. But Bernard, ever the independent soul, scoffed at the very idea. "I've managed to take care of myself for decades. Why would I stop now?" he would say with a twinkle in his eye, as if the thought was laughable. The thought of surrendering his freedom, the freedom to live on his terms, in his own space, was too much for him to bear. To Bernard, moving into a nursing home would mean giving up far more than just his physical space. It would mean relinquishing the very essence of who he was. Someone who could make his own decisions, live on his schedule, and find joy in the little things like tending to his garden or choosing when to enjoy a pastry. These weren't mere luxuries to him. They were the cornerstones of his life, the things that gave him a sense of purpose, a reason to get up each morning. And he wasn't ready to give that up for anything. Not for anyone. Instead of resigning himself to the confines of a nursing home, Bernard made a decision that reflected his resilience and love for life. He adapts as only someone with his spirit could. He hired a housekeeper to help with the tasks that had become too strenuous. He had safety rails installed in his bathroom, something that offered both practicality and a sense of security. And perhaps most importantly, he set up an emergency alert system, ensuring that he could always be reached should something go wrong. His daughter, who shared his fierce independence, would visit him weekly, taking him grocery shopping and spending time cooking meals together, those cherished moments that kept their bond strong. Through these changes, Bernard was able to maintain the life he loved, one where his independence and dignity remained intact. Bernard's story is a testament to the strength that resides in all of us. It is a powerful reminder that aging doesn't mean losing control over our lives, our choices, or our happiness. It means adapting, finding new ways to continue living with purpose, and most of all, refusing to surrender the freedom that defines us. Have you ever thought about how you want to live when you grow old? Will it be a life where you remain in charge of your own choices, or one where others decide everything for you, perhaps in a place where you no longer feel truly at home? The answer, I believe, lies in the spirit you carry within you, the same one Bernard carried all his life. Story 2. The TikToker Grandma, Mrs. Agatha and the Ageless Dance Moves. At 78, Mrs. Agatha had never bought into the idea that getting older meant slowing down. She firmly believed that age was just a number, not a reason to stop embracing life with passion. One sunny afternoon, she found herself sitting in the living room, watching her grandchildren giggle and stare at their phones, completely absorbed in something. Intrigued by their laughter, she leaned over and, with her ever-curious spirit, asked, "What's so funny? Show me." Lily, her 18-year-old granddaughter, looked up from her phone, a mischievous glint in her eye, and responded, "Grandma, this is TikTok. People create short, fun videos, dance around, and even go live to chat with others." Mrs. Agatha raised an eyebrow, not in judgment but in genuine curiosity. "So you're saying old folks like me can join in too?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement and anticipation. Lily laughed softly, clearly amused by the idea. "Well, no one's stopping you, Grandma. But, honestly, I've never seen anyone your age try something like this before." And that simple, playful comment sparked something deep within Mrs. Agatha's heart. It was as if the world was offering her a new adventure, one that she wasn't going to let slip by. She felt a burst of joy and excitement at the thought of trying something completely out of her comfort zone. That was all the encouragement she needed. Her first video was nothing extraordinary, just a short clip of her dancing in the kitchen while baking her famous cookies. She was having fun, her body moving to the rhythm, and her heart felt lighter than it had in years. When she posted it, the reaction was overwhelming. "Grandma, you're adorable. I wish my grandma was this cool," Lily exclaimed with a smile. Her heart swelled with happiness. She couldn't believe how much joy it brought to everyone, and it made her realize something important. Age didn't mean she had to be stuck in the past. If people enjoyed watching her dance and have fun, why not do more? Why not share her joy with the world? If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. So, she dove deeper into this new adventure. Every week, she challenged herself with something different. One day, she decided to tackle a trending TikTok dance challenge, her arms and legs moving to the beat, her eyes sparkling with pride. Another day, she live-streamed herself cooking her family's secret soup recipe, her love for cooking and family shining through every stirring motion. But what truly lit her soul on fire was getting her family involved. Her son, initially hesitant, became her director, helping her film her cooking videos. Lily joined in for quirky Q&A challenges, and even her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Tilly, found herself drawn into Mrs. Agatha's world of digital fun. They co-hosted a live stream about plant care, laughing together as they shared tips and stories. Of course, not everyone was supportive. Some of the neighbors shook their heads, muttering, "You're old, just relax and stop acting like a teenager." But Mrs. Agatha wasn't deterred. She simply laughed and said, "Why not? I've never done this before, and now seems as good a time as any to try something new. Mrs. Agatha's story is a poignant reminder that age should never be a barrier to new experiences, new joys, and new memories. She teaches us that the power of living fully doesn't diminish with age, it only grows stronger. So, have you ever dared to try something completely new? Have you ever allowed yourself the freedom to do something simply because it made you feel alive, regardless of what anyone else thinks? Whether it's making TikTok videos, dancing for fun, or simply laughing with those around you, why let time pass you by when you could be making unforgettable memories? The choice, as Mrs. Agatha shows us, is always yours to make. Story 3. The Adventurous Grandpa, Mr. HRY and his cross-country road trip. At 88, Mr. HRY was not the kind of man to resign himself to the comfort of an old armchair and the quiet of the familiar. He had lived through nearly 9 decades of life, but he never thought of retirement as a time to stop living. He firmly believed that the world was vast, a grand, expansive place that still held many wonders, even for someone as seasoned as him. He had always held a deep curiosity for the world beyond his doorstep, a curiosity that had simmered quietly for years. One day, however, it ignited into an unstoppable force when he glanced at a large map of the United States hanging on his grandson's wall. It was a simple, almost mundane moment, yet it struck him with the force of a revelation. As his eyes scanned the map, he suddenly asked himself, "How far have I gone in my life?" His fingers traced the lines of the map, connecting the places he had visited, mostly small towns, the ones where his life had taken root. But, as he retraced his steps, he came to a sobering realization. He had never truly traveled far beyond his home state. He had lived a full, rich life, but there was an entire world outside, unexplored and waiting for him. For the first time in ages, he felt a spark, an adventurous longing. And in that moment, he made a decision that would change the course of his life. He asked himself, why not start now? His heart raced with excitement. He was no longer willing to let age dictate his limits. The thought of sitting idly by, letting the years slip away, filled him with an unshakable sadness. He still had so much to see, so much to experience. What a waste it would be to let time escape without grabbing every opportunity to live. It was as if a fire had been lit inside him, a fire that only grew brighter with every passing second. Of course, no one in the family took him seriously at first. They chuckled at the idea, dismissing it as another one of Grandpa's passing whims. But Mr. HRY was determined. He pulled out a dusty old notebook and began scribbling down his plans. The pages are filled with details, maps, routes, and destinations. He was mapping out the adventure of a lifetime, and he could feel the thrill building inside him like a child anticipating the start of a grand journey. Soon, his dream was no longer a fleeting thought. It became a reality. He chose his old pickup truck, a faithful companion that had carried him through decades of life. It wasn't a fancy new vehicle or a luxury motorhome. It was simply his truck, a symbol of his long and rugged life. And now, it would become his mobile home, his sanctuary for the adventure ahead. With his trusty truck and a heart full of dreams, Mr. HRY set off on the cross-country journey that would prove to him and everyone around him that age is just a number when it comes to living fully. His journey began in New York, where he started the long drive to Chicago. Along the way, he indulged in the city's famous deep dish pizza, savoring each bite as if it were a treasure. He spent the evening at a jazz performance, letting the soulful music stir something deep within his heart. In Texas, he did something he had never imagined. He rode a horse for the first time. His legs wobbled with the unfamiliarity of the saddle, and for a split second, it felt as though the whole thing might end with him tumbling to the ground. But he didn't let fear stop him. He laughed it off, enjoying the moment for what it was, an adventure, a new experience that he would carry with him forever. By the time he reached California, Mr. HRY was more alive than he had ever felt. He parked his truck by the ocean, rolled down the windows, and breathed in the salty air, letting it fill his lungs. As he stared at the vast expanse of water before him, he was overwhelmed by a feeling of awe. He had seen the ocean before, of course, in pictures and stories, but never like this, never in person, never with the wind tugging at his hair and the waves crashing before him. It was as though he were seeing the sea for the very first time, and the sight of it left him feeling as though anything was possible. But of course, no great adventure is without its challenges. The journey was far from easy. Hours spent behind the wheel left his back aching and his hands stiff. He found himself lost more than once, wandering down unfamiliar roads, unsure of the way forward. But each detour was just another part of the adventure. Every wrong turn became an opportunity to ask for help, to meet new people, and to remind himself that the world is full of kindness and unexpected joys. Mr. HRY's journey wasn't just a physical one, it was an emotional and spiritual awakening. He had stepped out of his comfort zone and defied the expectations of those who thought he was too old, too set in his ways. And in doing so, he reminded everyone around him, especially his family, that growing old doesn't mean you stop living. It means you live with a deeper sense of purpose, with a desire to keep learning and discovering until your very last breath. Life is meant to be lived fully and without reservation. The world still has so much to offer, and as long as you remain curious, open to new experiences, and willing to take that first step, there is always room for one more adventure. For Mr. HRY, the road ahead was more than just a journey through the country. It was a statement, a declaration that age was no barrier to living with passion, with purpose, and with the joy of discovery. He had set out to explore the world, but in the process, he had discovered something even more precious, the limitless potential of his own heart. Story 4. The Tech-Savvy Grandma, Mrs. Elanor and Her Smartphone Journey. At 80 years old, Mrs. Elanor had always prided herself on being content without the need for technology. "Back in my day, we didn't have smartphones, and we got by just fine," she would often say with quiet pride, as if the simplicity of her past was somehow a badge of honor. She firmly believed that texting, video calls, and social media were things only for the younger generation. To her, older folks like herself should stick to the comforting routines of reading newspapers, tending to their gardens, and relishing the tranquility of a simpler life, where the chaos of constant connectivity was unnecessary. But one day, everything changed. It was a shift she had never anticipated, nor could she have ever prepared for. Her beloved granddaughter, Emily, moved to another city for work. The two had always shared an unbreakable bond, spending hours chatting about anything and everything. They would talk about everything from Mrs. Eleanor's garden to Emily's work challenges, and the joy of their daily conversations had become a cherished part of Eleanor's routine. But now, Emily's calls had become brief and sparse, limited to short phone calls that never quite captured the warmth and closeness they once shared. "Grandma, why don't you learn how to video call? That way, we can see each other," Emily suggested one evening, her voice filled with longing. At first, Elanor immediately shook her head, a deep frown creasing her weathered forehead. "I don't know how to use those things," she replied, the words escaping in a rush of resistance. "What if I press the wrong button? What if I mess it up?" The fear of the unknown gripped her heart, and the very thought of stepping into this modern, confusing world of screens and icons made her feel overwhelmed. But as she looked at the hope and love shining in Emily's eyes, something deep inside her softened. It was then that she realized that maybe, just maybe, this was more than just learning a new skill. It was about staying connected to the people she loved most, even when they were miles apart. She couldn't let fear or pride get in the way of that. And so, despite the unfamiliarity of it all, I decided to try. She wasn't sure if she could do it, but for Emily, she would give it a shot. With Emily's patient guidance over the phone, and after a few clumsy attempts where Eleanor's shaky hands fumbled over the unfamiliar screen, something magical happened. Mrs. Elanor successfully made her first video call. The moment she saw Emily's face, a rush of emotion flooded over her. There, in front of her, was the granddaughter she loved so dearly, smiling back at her through the screen. Eleanor's heart swelled with joy, and a deep, affectionate laugh escaped her lips. "Now I finally understand why you kids are always glued to your phones," she chuckled, a mixture of surprise and delight in her voice. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. From that day forward, Elanor was no longer afraid of technology. The fear that had once seemed so big now seemed small and insignificant. She learned how to text her family members, eagerly sending messages of love and support. She discovered the magic of online recipes, eagerly trying new dishes in her kitchen and sharing the results with her family. She even found a few light exercise tutorials online for seniors, reminding herself that it's never too late to take care of her body. She didn't need to become a tech expert, she realized. She just needed enough knowledge to stay connected with those who mattered most. Of course, there were still moments of embarrassment. There were times when she pressed the wrong button, sent blank messages, or accidentally started a video call at the most inopportune moments. One time, she accidentally video called her son while he was in the middle of a meeting at work. It was a little awkward, but Elanor simply shrugged and laughed. "I may be old," she'd say with a playful wink, "but I'm still learning. You all need to be patient with me." Her family, of course, couldn't help but laugh with her, realizing just how much love and courage it took for her to step into this new world of technology. Mrs. Eleanor's story serves as a beautiful reminder that technology isn't a barrier, it's a gateway. It's a tool that can open doors to new connections, experiences, and opportunities, no matter your age. It's easy to get caught up in the belief that certain things are beyond us and that the world is moving too fast for us to keep up. But I believe that every day presents a chance to learn something new, break free from our comfort zones, and embrace the changes that life brings. Mrs. Elanor did just that, and in doing so, she enriched her life and strengthened the bond with her granddaughter in ways she never imagined. Have you ever tried learning something you once thought was beyond your reach? Don't let age, fear, or uncertainty hold you back from experiencing the wonders of today's world. There is always room to grow, to learn, and to connect, no matter how old we are. Would you let technology bring you closer to the ones you love, or would you let it slip away, leaving you further behind? Story 5. Mr. Lewis and the Garden of Memories. At 79, Mr. Lewis had come to a powerful realization. There are many things in life that one can lose and even regain, but passion, that deep, undeniable force that fuels the heart, is something that cannot be retrieved once it's gone. And for Mr. Lewis, that passion had always been his beloved garden. It wasn't just a hobby. It was a part of him, a living testament to years of dedication, love, and care. For decades, his mornings began with a cup of steaming coffee in hand, stepping outside into his world of vibrant flowers and lush greenery, marveling at the way the leaves would stretch towards the golden sunlight. There was no rush. There was no need to hurry. In each carefully tended plant, each bloom that unfolded, there was a memory, a silent yet profound witness to all the moments he had spent nurturing them, watching them grow, and finding joy in the quiet rhythm of the seasons. But as the years passed, time didn't just enrich his garden, it slowed him down. His body, once strong and agile, now ached and protested with every movement. His back, which had once bent over in the dirt with ease, now groaned with each painful twist. His knees, once reliable and steadfast, cracked and creaked like old wood with every step he took. Some mornings, after he had carefully watered his plants, he'd have to stop, resting his weary hands on the railing, sighing deeply as he felt the weight of old age settling into his bones. It wasn't just physical weariness, it was the feeling of betrayal. The garden was still there, vibrant and full of life, but he wasn't the man he used to be. His son, noticing his struggle, had gently suggested, "Dad, maybe it's time to take a break. We could hire someone to take care of the garden, or we could just let it grow naturally." The offer, however well-meaning, felt like a betrayal in itself. How could Mr. Lewis, after all these years of tender care, simply let go of the one thing that had brought him joy and purpose. How could he abandon the garden that had been his constant companion, the living proof of his love and devotion? He couldn't. No, not yet. So, he adapted. He made peace with the limitations of his aging body. If his legs couldn't carry him as far as they once had, he would sit beside his plants, letting his heart pour into each one, still tending to them with all the love he had left to give. If his hands had grown weaker, he chose smaller plants, ones that didn't require as much strength but still filled him with wonder. He could no longer lift heavy pots, but he could still touch the delicate petals, inhale the earthy fragrance of the soil, and feel a deep connection to each living thing in his garden. He arranged small potted plants on shelves, hung flowers from his balcony, and allowed the gentle breeze to carry their fragrance through the air. It wasn't the grand garden it once was, but it was still his, still alive, still his sanctuary. Now, he didn't need to bend down to feel the cool leaves between his fingers. With just a simple reach, he could touch life and connect with the world in the quiet comfort of his small, peaceful garden. Sitting there, sipping his morning coffee, watching the sunlight filter through the leaves, he found a deep sense of contentment. At that moment, Mr. Lewis realized something profound. Gardening had never truly been about the size or grandeur of the space. It was never about creating a perfect, sprawling garden. It was about the joy of nurturing life itself, about planting seeds of hope and joy and watching them grow, even in the smallest ways. His garden may have shrunk in size, but his happiness, his passion for life, remained unshaken. The simple act of tending to his plants still brought him comfort, and in that quiet space, he felt as if he was still giving life, still nurturing something beautiful, even if it was just a few pots of flowers on his balcony. Have you ever stopped to think about how you want to live as you grow older? Will you hold on to the things that once made your heart sing, or will you let them slip away, allowing time and age to steal the things that brought you joy? As Mr. Lewis has shown, it's never too late to keep planting, to keep nurturing, and to keep holding on to the passions that have shaped us. Life, even in its later years, can still be full of wonder if we're willing to adapt and find new ways to keep our hearts alive. Story 6. Mrs. Catherine and her decision to stay home. At 86, Mrs. Catherine had a quiet understanding in her heart that her body was no longer the same vibrant vessel it once was. The once familiar stairs now seemed to stretch higher, more daunting with each step she took. Household chores, which she had carried out so effortlessly in the past, now felt heavy, and there were moments when the silence in her expansive home seemed to echo louder than ever before. It was as though time had slowly slipped away, leaving behind only the fading echoes of the laughter and warmth that once filled her space. Her children, with hearts full of love and concern, urged her, insisted really, to move into a nursing home. You'll have friends there, around-the-clock nurses, and you won't need to worry about a thing anymore, they promised, their voices filled with certainty. But Catherine, with a softness in her eyes and a knowing smile that only comes with the wisdom of age, gently shook her head. I don't want a place where my schedule is handed to me like a list of instructions, where someone else tells me when to eat and when to sleep. I want to remain in the place that has cradled my soul for so many years. I want to stay in my home. Her voice was calm, but there was an undeniable strength in her words. To Mrs. Catherine, this house was far more than just bricks and mortar. It was the fabric of her life, woven with decades of memories. It was the very place where she and her late husband had spent hours painting the living room together, laughing as they debated which shade of blue would best suit the walls. It was where her children had once sprinted down the hallways, their laughter filling the air like the sweetest music. It was where every corner, every creaking floorboard, and every room held a story of love, sacrifice, and a life well lived. How could she possibly leave all of that behind just because the years were starting to show? But Mrs. Catherine was no stranger to resilience. She didn't let the challenges of aging define her. Instead of surrendering to the limitations that came with time, she chose to find ways to adapt, ways that would allow her to continue living the life she so cherished. She called her son, asking him to install railings along the stairs to lay down anti-slip mats that would prevent accidents. She hired a housekeeper a few days a week to help with the tasks that were becoming too much to handle alone. And perhaps most importantly, she joined a senior community group where she could connect with others, share stories over tea, and continue to build meaningful relationships. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. For Mrs. Catherine, aging wasn't about giving up on the things that mattered most to her. It wasn't about simply waiting for life to pass by. Instead, it was about finding a way to hold on to those precious moments, those irreplaceable connections, for as long as possible. It was about fighting for the life she loved, even if that meant making a few adjustments along the way. And in the stillness of her home, she found a deep peace, knowing that her choice, her decision to remain in the place that had shaped her, was not just a defiance of age, but an affirmation of everything she had worked for, built, and loved. Story 7. Mr. Victor and his journey back to memories. At 85, Mr. Victor found himself in a place he never imagined. The days of long drives, winding through small towns, exploring quiet little streets, and savoring sunsets by riversides had slipped away. Once, he was a passionate traveler. His heart danced with the thrill of discovering new places, and his soul was nurtured by the adventures he shared with his beloved wife. Together, they had experienced the world, from the cobblestone paths of Paris to the endless fields of golden wheat in Italy. They had walked, hand in hand, on roads less traveled, finding beauty in the small, quiet moments that most would pass by. But now, as the years had added their weight, his legs were no longer strong enough to carry him on those once-cherished journeys. And it wasn't just his legs. There was a part of his spirit that felt tethered, longing for the freedom of movement that age had slowly taken away. One quiet afternoon, as he shuffled through his bookshelf, his fingers brushed against something familiar, an old photo box. It had been years since he'd opened it, but the moment he lifted the lid, he was overwhelmed. The pictures inside were more than just images. They were pieces of his soul, snapshots of his life with his wife, frozen moments that captured the joy, the laughter, and the quiet beauty of their travels. His heart swelled as he relived those memories, but unlike before, they didn't leave him with a sense of sorrow or longing for what was no longer possible. Instead, they sparked a sudden realization, one so powerful it felt like a light igniting within him. If I can't physically go far, why not bring the journey to me? He thought. With that thought, a new adventure began, one where the boundaries of age and distance no longer held him back. It wasn't about the miles anymore. It was about the richness of those experiences. He turned to his grandchildren, with their quick fingers on the pulse of technology, and asked them to help him find videos of the places he had once visited. The quiet streets of Paris, the golden fields of Italy, each place was just a click away. And so, every morning, Mr. Victor would settle into his favorite chair with a warm cup of coffee, each sip bringing with it the essence of the destinations he had loved. He didn't need to leave his home to feel the magic of those places again. Through the screen, he could hear the rustling of leaves in the French countryside or see the gentle sway of the wheat in the breeze. The world came to him, in all its splendor, without the need for a passport or a suitcase. But he didn't stop there. The journey was only just beginning. Mr. Victor knew that one of the most precious parts of travel was the food, the flavors that could transport you to another place, another time. So, with the same enthusiasm, he asked his daughter-in-law to bake a classic French apple tart. And on another day, he savored a glass of Italian wine, its rich flavor reminding him of the days spent in a vineyard with his wife by his side, laughing under the warm sun. Each bite, each taste, brought him back, not in the way he had once experienced it, but in a new, profound way. It was like discovering a part of himself that he had almost forgotten, a part that still loved the world as much as it ever had. One day, someone asked him, with a hint of sympathy, "Doesn't it make you sad not being able to visit those places in person?" Mr. Victor simply smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that spoke volumes. He gazed out the window, where the golden afternoon sun filtered through the leaves of the tree outside. "The best part of a journey," he said softly, "isn't the distance traveled, but the memories we carry. And those memories, well, we can relive them as many times as we want. They never leave us. They are our treasures, and no one can take them away." At that moment, Mr. Victor's words resonated deeply. He wasn't just talking about his travels, but about life itself. It was a powerful reminder that the true richness of life isn't measured in the number of places we visit or the distance we travel. It's in the memories we create, the moments we cherish, and the love we carry with us wherever we go. As his journey continued, Mr. Victor realized that he had found a way to keep the spirit of adventure alive, no matter how many years had passed. In doing so, he discovered that the heart, much like the world, is vast and infinite, capable of holding a lifetime of journeys within it. As we come to the end of Mr. Victor's beautiful journey, we're reminded of the powerful lesson that life's most precious moments aren't always about where we go, but the memories we create along the way. Even as time passes and circumstances change, there's always a way to keep the spirit of adventure alive within us, whether it's through the memories we cherish or the simple joys we find every day. What have you learned from Mr. Victor's story? Is there a journey in your life that you've held dear and perhaps could experience again in a new way? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below and share with us one thing you've learned today that you plan to bring into your own life. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep bringing you more inspiring content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.